most ad accounts I see don't make most out of their ad creatives because of poor or outdated advertising strategies. So in this video, I'll give you a full guide with the best up-to-date practices of how an ad account should be run based on over 12 million in sales generated. So the first best practice that is getting ignored the most is avoiding audience overlap. If you have some campaigns that are targeting the same audience, they will compete against each other and basically diminish their returns. So how do you minimize audience overlap? Well, if you're running, for example, a scaling campaign and a testing campaign, you just want to have one to test and scale. Also, if you're running a retargeting campaign, this strategy is rather old. You also want to have that all in that one campaign. So essentially you want to run one campaign per business objective. A business objective might be selling a certain product in a certain country, or if you launch another product, well, there the audience is of course different, then you can actually have another campaign. So here's an example of this. You can see we run like 6 campaigns in the account, but this is one product and this is one product, and these are kind of booster, Advantage Plus, catalog campaigns. So you can see we still have like an interest campaign and a broad campaign. The interest campaign is just for audience testing or like boosting the winners with interest targeting, and you can see this actually works for this brand incredibly well. So this is why we do it. So here we are sacrificing actually audience overlap to some degree. But again, if you're already having an optimized broad campaign, it will usually outperform. So you can still run audience testing campaigns, but like not the classical testing campaign, scaling campaign, retargeting campaign structure, and so on, because that will just diminish your returns as much as possible. So in general, audience overlap, avoid it as much as possible, but when it makes sense, it can make sense to sacrifice to a certain degree and have audience overlap, for example, to test certain audiences like we do in the audience interest campaigns, or the catalog Advantage Plus campaign that is performing very well just on itself. So here it makes sense to sacrifice it. Then the next thing, and that might be controversial, is no cost caps or bid caps. So the idea that you don't have to adjust budget every single day up or down depending on performance, but actually just tell Facebook, okay, only convert if we get that certain cost per result. Sounds good, but this has some bigger problems. First of all, if you don't test enough ads, it might be that you just stop spending at all or spend very small amounts, which will disrupt your funnel. And then you also don't even have data on why certain ads don't spend, like what's their weak point. If you're not experienced with ad creatives, you might be just saying, okay, this didn't work, let's test something else. But it's very important that you get the data of why it didn't work, so you can actually take it and improve it in all your future ads. Another problem with cost and bid caps is that, well, if you think you set up a cost per result target, then what is Facebook gonna do? You know that targeting the middle of funnel or the bottom of funnel is usually more price efficient because those people are on the edge of buying. So let's say you switch an account from AutoBid to cost controls. Well, then that account, to fulfill your cost control on the biggest spend possible, will go ahead and target those people who are already on the edge of buying. But you can imagine what that means. So it targets the bottom, like the lower funnel, and then at some point you burn this part out. Like in the beginning, it works really, really well because you get better cost per result on the same or similar ad spend. But then at some point you burn out that part of the funnel, they all buy, and from some point it will reduce the spend or just stop spending because for the top of funnel you need more nurturing and it might be more expensive than the cost per result target that you set. So in general, as they say, cost control is good to control your cost, but not to grow your business. Now the third thing, and this is very important, but again gets ignored a lot, is scientific split testing. If you're running a campaign, you want to have different ad sets, of course, in this, but in the ad sets, you don't want to like mix statics and videos or even different ad ideas, even if they are all static or videos. But what you want to do is, for example, here, let's go into this ad. Now here we have 3 times like the same ad. It's not the same, but the same concept, just with different headline variations. So here we are making an iteration and are testing another headline. If you launch a new concept, you usually want to test the same video with 3 different visual hooks, so 3 different versions of the video, or the same headline with 3 different designs, because usually the visuals have the bigger impact. And then you can iterate on that by, let's say, keeping the winning headline or keeping the winning hook, but then changing up the body of the video or changing up the headline and testing other headlines on a static, and so on. This way you get actually data from your ad tests instead of just randomly going and saying, okay, this idea works, this idea doesn't work. Here, as you can see, we launched in this ad set, this split testing version, and you can see that one of them spent by far the most, right? And the other ones barely, and they didn't even get any purchases. So split tests are extremely powerful and important, because just like a difference in the headline or just a difference in the visual hook can make the difference between a winner and a loser in your ad account. Now, the next best practice is for testing ads. And this is also a common question that I get. Well, how long do you test ads? The better question would be, for how much spent do you test ads? Because technically it's not that important for how long you test them, but how much spent they take. Of course, if you run a test and spend all of your testing budget in one day, that's not representative, because that day might be just a dip. So in general, I recommend testing on $30 to $50 per day for such a split testing ad set as previously discussed, and letting that run until it spends 2 to 3 times of your desired cost per acquisition. So let's say you want to convert at $15 per result. Well, then you just let it spend $30 up to $45 before you make a decision. If it's profitable at this point, you don't turn it off. If it's not profitable, you turn it off. But of course, the testing budget of $30 to $50 just goes for products that have like an AOV of 80 up to $200. If you're, for example, selling like high ticket saunas or whatever for $3,000, then of course you want to be spending a little bit more on testing, because you know that you need way more like landing page views to get a conversion usually on those high ticket products. And then the last thing, very simple but very important, is scaling. One thing first, you never want to horizontally scale. If you see YouTube videos that tell you, okay, just take this campaign and duplicate it, well, that's very bad, because if you remember, it goes against the first best advertising practice on Meta right now, which is avoiding audience overlap. If they tell you just take the ad set and duplicate it, again, like what you're essentially doing is doubling the budget on that ad set. And that usually doesn't work well. What you want to do instead is just go into the campaigns. Well, here we are running CBOs. So here we look at the campaigns, and then you look at the last 3 days. And then you might have a ROAS target or cost per result target or cost per acquisition target, whatever you're looking at. And depending on the performance, let's say this account has a performance target of ROAS 5. So here we can see this is below for the last 3 days. So here we would go and decrease the budget by 20%. Now here we see, okay, this is above our target. So here we would go and increase the budget by 20%. And here we see, okay, this is at target. So we would just leave it as it is. And this is what we do every single day. For example, if it's tomorrow on the 6th, we will look at the last 3 days like this, and then again, decrease or increase by 20%. And this is also the same what we did the last 3 days. Here we looked at it and decreased or increased by 20%. So if you update your ad account with this strategy, you'll be seeing immediately way better performance. But to keep scaling, you still need, of course, to fuel it with strong ad creatives every single week. If you want me to help you to transition to this ad system and provide you with strong ads, click the link in the description and schedule a free call with me today. But if you want to get involved with creative strategy yourself, I recommend checking out this video where I break down our 8-figure creative strategy that you can also just take and apply to your own brand. Keep scaling. Bye.